Have you heard of Aberfan, of Aberfan, of Aberfan? Have you heard of Aberfan? They're all dead. Probably not my favorite intro, but we're gonna roll with it because it's true. Hello, and welcome back to Idea Checks, where we take an analytical lens to mysticism and spirituality. My name is Kiara, the Mad Witch, and today we are continuing to talk about stories where people received precognitive dreams and didn't do anything about them, and so they died. So far, we've talked about Abraham Lincoln, the sinking of the Titanic, and today we are talking about a little-known Welsh village called Aberfan, whose only claim to fame is that it was unfortunately decimated by a landslide. And the reason we're talking about these things is because they are important and most people don't realize they exist. And so we've talked a lot on this channel about the formal laboratory research done around psychic phenomena, but also want to talk about the practical applications, like what is it good for? We don't totally know yet. We kind of know. We could come up with some ideas for how psychic phenomena might actually be applicable. For example, did you know that of the 4 planes hijacked during 9/11, all 4 had a load factor of around 31%? In other words, a lot of people did not get onto those planes, less than half in some cases. And if it was just one plane, we could chalk it up to coincidence. But the fact that it was all 4 planes that had an unusual, they were all unusually devoid of passengers, and the fact that we know dozens of people reported having dreams prior to 9/11 about the events, it raises some questions. What does it mean?
Well, combined with what we know from thousands of laboratory studies and hundreds of cases documented throughout history, what it means is that reality is nothing like what we have been told. It also means that our greatest potential as human beings is largely untapped.
It also means that the widespread understanding and study of these phenomena would create massive and positive impacts on the world. Society would be transformed, and I think for the better. But the mainstream want to be like, no, it can't possibly be real because it doesn't fit into my tiny, limited worldview. It doesn't fit into what I believe is possible about reality and consciousness. Therefore, I'm not even willing to entertain the idea, even though impossible things occur not infrequently. So let's just try on the idea hat for a moment. If this is real, hypothetically speaking, if this is real, then the anti-psychic paradigm, the anti-psychic rhetoric, as Ingo Swann calls it, is doing us a massive disservice. I think the 144 people who died at Aberfan would agree, but we can't ask them because they're dead.
Who are you?
We rise up from the dust and clear my throat.
The little Welsh village of Aberfan sits at the base of a narrow valley, the coal mines in the mountains above it. And the mining engineers had to put the coal somewhere, right? And so they created these piles of coal all over the mountainside called coal tips. And there was one right above Aberfan that had grown particularly friggin' ginormous. And off and on, the residents of Aberfan expressed concern. They were like, should we be worried that that's going to cause like a landslide or something? Like, is it good there? Like, and the mining engineers brushed off the concerns because money.
Here comes the money.
Here we go.
October 21st, 1966. It was 9:15, just 15 minutes after all of the children had assembled at school, when that massive coal tip did in fact give way. 144 people died, and 128 of them were children. The following day, a Mr. J.C. Barker, MD, so he was a medical doctor, visited Aberfan and became aware of how many premonitions had occurred around this event. And he was puzzled by this, so he published a sort of a call to action or request in a magazine called, it was London's Evening Standard. And he asked that anyone who had foreknowledge of the Aberfan disaster please write to him. He received no less than 76 claims, ranging from parents whose children had told them that they had dreams about dying in the landslide, and also people from all over Wales and England who had visions or dreams of this massive landslide, this disaster. Some of them even heard the name Aberfan in their dreams. On October 20th, Emma said, "Mummy, let me tell you about my dream last night." Mother, "Darling, I've no time now. Tell me again later." Emma, "No, Mummy, you must listen. I dreamt I went to school and there was no school there. Something black had come down all over it." Later, it was learned that Emma was not the only child to have premonitions of dying in school when something black slid onto it. In fact, as early as 10 months before the disaster, dreams, visions, and psychic messages concerning it began popping up all over Wales and England. In following up on these letters, Barker was able to ascertain that many of the claims were indeed acceptable because the person involved either had told others of intuitions before the disaster or they had written them down. Only a few were unverifiable. However, had there existed a central premonitions registry to which people could send their intuitions or telephone them in with urgency some of the intuitions reflected, there can be little doubt that the name Aberfan would have been noted. The incoming psychic impressions have been combined with quick perusal of the existence of the dangerous situation here. Its inhabitants might have been alerted, i.e. a sort of a call up the mine and get them out of there thing, exactly as I witnessed several times during in Telluride during my childhood. So Swan grew up in a place, Telluride, I don't even know how to say it, but they had this uncanny collective ability there, and he never thought of it as psychic until he was older, when people, even if the day looked perfect and they had every reason to believe it was going to be like a normal sunny day, people would get like a hunch that something wasn't feeling so good, like weather-wise, and so they would all pull their kids out of school. And Ingo experienced that a number of times during his childhood, and so he's juxtaposing that with what happens at the coal mines / Aberfan. And this is one of those things that flies so in the face of some of our most fundamentally held beliefs, right? That time is linear and psychic phenomena don't exist. And I've struggled with this for years because Psi is not supposed to be real, right? And yet when we look at the formal laboratory research, when we look at anecdotes, stories, maybe our own experiences with these things, and also in combination with the mystery schools, the esoteric teachings, the prophets, the mystics all throughout history, they all say the same thing. They all indicate the same thing, which is that there is more to reality than our physical five senses can perceive. But there are ways of tapping into this other facet, the mystical underpinnings of life. And so in my humble ass opinion, when I throw my preconceived notions out the window of what reality is, the logical conclusion is that the is real. Don't ask me how. Don't ask me why we don't know about that or try to harness it, but it's the only thing that makes sense. And the possibility of this being real, I think, actually scares a lot of people, which is why they're not even willing to consider it. And I think with precognition, one of the fears that comes up, I think it triggers the shit out of people for a lot of reasons, but I think one of the reasons that precognition in particular seems disturbing to people is because people might feel doomed. It feels very fatalistic, right? Like Lincoln, for example, did not believe, even after he had his dreams of being assassinated, he did not believe that there was anything he could do to avert it. When in fact, all he needed to do was not go to the theater. That was it. It's true that at this point in time, psychic phenomena, it's largely uncharted, right? And that is the case because most people don't believe in this stuff, and so we don't put time, energy, and resources into even exploring the possibility of it. And so we have to make some speculations, right? Without funding to do a ton of research into this stuff at this time. A lot of these things are speculation as to why they work or how they work. One of the speculative conclusions that I have come to, though, is that this ability to see things before they happen is not fatalistic. We have precognitions because it's like a psychic alert system where we are able to change the trajectory of something that we don't necessarily want. And I had come to that conclusion some years ago when I came to the conclusion that the universe is a fundamentally friendly place. And Ingo Swann echoes that in his book, Psychic Literacy. And the way he describes it is that everything that we are, right? We have evolved in such a way that we are geared for survival. That's why we have adaptations of pretty much any kind. Does it help me survive? Does it help me reproduce? And psi phenomena would be no exception, right? Nature doesn't benefit from just scaring out of people. Call it God, call it your higher self, whatever. Like, why be shown something, an outcome, something that you are headed toward, if it's just meant to scare you? Like, I don't think that makes any sense at all. But a lot of people who have precognitive experiences are afraid for a number of reasons. I think people are afraid of being called crazy. I think a lot of people are afraid they are crazy. For me personally, I'm afraid that I'm not crazy.
Flashback.
To me, that is the absolute scariest possibility, because if I'm not crazy and this stuff is real, that means we're wrong about literally everything. Like, talk about a paradigm shift, right? If this stuff is real, it just opens up like a Pandora's box of mystical possibilities. Like, everything we think we know would be turned upside down and inside out. And I think that if this stuff does turn out to be real and it hits the mainstream, no system and no person on this planet will go untouched. But that's idea sex for another time. So in any case, if you like to smash that like button. And thank you so much for sharing some of your precious time with me today on Idea Sex. Until next time, stay very, 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 very blessed.